What if I told you that the greatest mass murderers in human history weren't psychopaths or madmen, but people who genuinely believed they were saving the world? What if the ideologies that promise to liberate humanity are the very ones that have buried millions beneath their noble intentions? Today, we're going to confront one of the most uncomfortable questions of our time. Between capitalism and socialism, which system has more blood on its hands? And more importantly, why does this question make us so uncomfortable that we'd rather avoid it entirely? If you value content that challenges you to think beyond the obvious, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. This isn't about picking sides, it's about understanding the dangerous patterns that repeat throughout history when we stop questioning the systems we live under. Let's take this journey together. The question isn't just academic. Right now, as you're watching this video, somewhere in the world, someone is dying because of decisions made by people who believe their economic system is the key to human happiness. The tragedy isn't that they're evil, it's that they're convinced they're good. Let me start with a story that will challenge everything you think you know about good intentions. In 1932, Walter Durney, a New York Times correspondent, won the Pulitzer Prize for his reporting on the Soviet Union. While millions of Ukrainians were starving to death in the Holodomor, a man-made famine orchestrated by Stalin's policies, Durney wrote glowing reports about Soviet agricultural success. He wasn't a communist agent. He was a respected journalist who genuinely believed he was To understand this paradox, we need to examine the work of Hannah Arendt, the German Jewish political theorist who survived Nazi Germany and spent her life trying to understand how ordinary people become complicit in extraordinary evil. Arendt, born in 1906, lived through the collapse of the Weimar Republic, fled Nazi Germany, and later witnessed the rise of Stalinism. She wasn't just theorizing about totalitarianism, she had escaped it twice. Her masterwork, The Origins of Totalitarianism, published in 1951, introduced a revolutionary idea that both fascism and communism, despite their apparent opposites, shared the same fundamental structure of total domination. But here's what made Arendt's insight so profound. She argued that the real danger wasn't the economic systems themselves, but what she called the banality of evil, the way ordinary people, following ordinary procedures, could participate in extraordinary horrors without ever seeing themselves as murderers. Arendt observed that both capitalist and socialist systems, when pushed to their logical extremes, create what she called superfluous people, human beings who become expendable for the sake of the system. Under capitalism, people become surplus labor, disposable when they're no longer economically useful. Under socialism, people become enemies of the state, expendable when they resist the collective good. The question isn't whether capitalism or socialism kills more people. The question is, what happens when any system becomes more important than the human beings it's supposed to serve? Let's dive deeper into the psychology of systemic violence. Modern neuroscience reveals something disturbing about how our brains process moral decisions when they're mediated by systems and institutions. Research by psychologist Stanley Milgram in the 1960s showed that ordinary people would administer what they believed were lethal electric shocks to strangers simply because an authority figure told them it was necessary for scientific progress. The subjects weren't sadists, they were following the logic of a system they trusted. This finding is crucial because it explains how both capitalist and socialist systems can produce mass casualties without anyone feeling personally responsible. when deaths occur through market mechanisms like denying health care to those who can't pay, or allowing unsafe working conditions. To maintain profitability, the killing is distributed across so many decision makers that no individual feels like a murderer. Similarly, when deaths occur through state mechanisms like forced collectivization leading to famine, or sending dissidents to labor camps, the killing is bureaucratized to the point where each person is just following procedures. Consider the Irish potato famine of 1845 to 1852. While potatoes rotted in the fields, the British government continued exporting grain from Ireland to maintain free trade principles. Over 1 million Irish people died, not because of natural disaster, but because of ideological commitment to laissez-faire economics. The officials weren't evil, they genuinely believed that interfering with market forces would cause greater harm in the long run. Now consider the collectivization of agriculture in the Soviet Union. Under Stalin, when peasants resisted giving up their private farms, they were labeled kulaks and either executed or sent to gulags. The resulting disruption of food production led to famines that killed millions. The officials weren't sadists, they genuinely believed they were building a more equitable society. Today, we see the same patterns playing out in the United States. Approximately 45,000 people die annually from lack of health insurance, according to Harvard Medical School research. These deaths are built into the system. They're not the result of individual malice, but of a collective decision to prioritize market efficiency over universal coverage. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, over 300,000 people have died due to the collapse of the healthcare system under socialist policies. According to the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, these deaths, too, are systemic, the result of price controls, currency manipulation, and authoritarian governance that destroyed the country's ability to import medicine and medical equipment. The terrifying truth is that both systems can kill without anyone being a killer. If any of this is making you uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is your brain trying to protect you from cognitive dissonance, the painful experience of holding contradictory beliefs simultaneously. We want to believe that our preferred economic system is inherently good and that the other side is inherently evil. But what if the real danger isn't in choosing the wrong system, but in believing that any system is a substitute for moral reasoning? If this is making you think differently about politics, economics, or just human nature itself, hit that like button and share this with someone who isn't afraid to question their assumptions. The conversation we're having right now, this willingness to examine uncomfortable truths, might be the most important thing we can do as citizens. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The question, who is killing, capitalist or socialist, is the wrong question. It's like asking whether fire or water is more dangerous. The answer depends entirely on the circumstances and the people controlling these forces. Let's look at the numbers, but let's also understand what the numbers mean. The Black Book of Communism, published in 1997, estimates that communist regimes killed approximately 94 million people in the 20th century. These include deaths from famines, executions, forced labor camps, and political purges. The numbers are staggering: 65 million in China under Mao, 20 million in the Soviet Union under Stalin, to million in Cambodia under Pol Pot. But here's what's equally staggering. Capitalist systems during the same period were responsible for massive loss of life through colonialism, slavery, exploitation, and wars fought over resources and markets. The Atlantic slave trade killed an estimated 12 million Africans. The Bengali famine of 1943, exacerbated by British colonial policies, killed 3 million Indians. The Indonesian mass killings of 1965 to 66, supported by capitalist governments fighting communist influence, killed between 500,000 to 3 million people. But here's the crucial point. These numbers don't tell us which system is inherently more murderous. They tell us that when human beings organize themselves into large-scale systems, whether economic, political, or social, those systems can become engines of destruction. The pattern is always the same. A crisis emerges. Leaders convince themselves that extraordinary measures are necessary. Normal moral constraints are suspended temporarily. And before anyone realizes what's happening, the system is consuming human lives to perpetuate itself. Consider what's happening right now. In capitalist countries, we're seeing deaths from opioid addiction, 70,000 annually in the US, suicide rates linked to economic despair, and climate change effects that disproportionately affect the poor. In socialist countries like North Korea, we see mass starvation, political executions, and a population imprisoned by their own government. The tragedy isn't that one system is evil and the other is good. The tragedy is that both systems, when they become ends in themselves rather than means to human flourishing, can justify enormous suffering. Hannah Arendt saw this clearly. The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. The bureaucrats who administered the Holocaust weren't monsters, they were ordinary people who had learned to see other human beings as administrative problems to be solved. So, what do we do with this knowledge? How do we prevent ourselves from becoming complicit in systems that kill? First, we must cultivate what Arendt called the faculty of judgment, the ability to think without banisters, to question the systems we're embedded in, even when those systems promise us security and meaning. This means developing specific practices, critical thinking about our own beliefs. Ask yourself, what am I willing to sacrifice for my political ideals? At what point would I say this has gone too far? If you can't answer these questions, you're vulnerable to becoming complicit in atrocities. Studying history, especially the history of people who resisted systems from within. Learn about figures like Oskar Schindler, who saved lives by subverting Nazi bureaucracy, or Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who exposed Soviet brutality from within the system. These people weren't heroes because they chose the right side, they were heroes because they chose human beings over abstract principles. Cultivating empathy across ideological lines. The moment you stop seeing people who disagree with you as fully human, you've taken the first step toward justifying their suffering. This doesn't mean abandoning your principles, it means remembering that your principles exist to serve human flourishing, not the other way around. Practicing moral courage. In small situations, the person who speaks up when their company is cutting corners on safety is developing the same muscle they'll need if they're ever asked to participate in something truly horrific. Evil is rarely a single dramatic choice, it's usually a series of small compromises that make the next compromise easier. Understanding that systems are tools, not gods. Markets are tools for organizing economic activity. Governments are tools for organizing political activity. Neither should be worshipped. Both should be constantly questioned and reformed. But individual vigilance isn't enough. We need systemic changes that make it harder for any ideology to accumulate enough power to commit mass atrocities. The founders of the American system understood this instinctively. They created a system of checks and balances not because they trusted democracy, but because they didn't trust any concentration of power. As James Madison wrote, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. Modern societies need similar checks against both market and state power, institutional pluralism. No single institution, whether government, corporation, or party, should have the power to control all aspects of human life. This means strong civil society, independent media, robust legal systems, and competitive markets, transparency and accountability mechanisms. Both public and private institutions must be subject to scrutiny. This means freedom of information laws, independent auditing, whistleblower protections, and judicial review. Education that prioritizes critical thinking over ideology. Schools should teach students how to think, not what to think. This means teaching logic, statistics, history, and philosophy, the tools people need to evaluate claims and resist manipulation. Constitutional protections for individual rights. Whether the threat comes from socialist authoritarianism or capitalist exploitation, certain rights must be considered inviolable. Freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association, and the right to due process. Economic systems that balance efficiency with equity. This might mean market economies with strong social safety nets, or democratic socialism with robust property rights. The key is preventing any single principle, whether equality or efficiency, from becoming absolute. The goal isn't to choose between capitalism and socialism. The goal is to create systems that serve human beings rather than demanding that human beings serve systems. We return to our original question: who is killing, capitalist or socialist? The answer is both, and neither. Systems don't kill people. People kill people. But systems can make it easier for people to kill without feeling like killers. They can create distance between actions and consequences, diffuse responsibility across bureaucracies, and provide moral justifications for the unjustifiable. The real question isn't which system is more dangerous. The real question is, how do we stay human in a world of systems? Hannah Arendt spent her life trying to answer this question. Her conclusion was both simple and profound. We must never stop thinking. The moment we let any system, economic, political, or social, do our thinking for us, we become vulnerable to participating in horrors we never intended. This means questioning everything, including our own beliefs. It means remembering that every statistic represents a human being with hopes, fears, and people who love them. It means choosing human dignity over abstract principles, even when those principles promise us a better world. The most dangerous people in history weren't those who chose evil. They were those who stopped choosing altogether, who surrendered their judgment to systems that promised to make the hard decisions for them. So I leave you with this question. What idea are you willing to question this week? What belief are you so certain about that you've stopped examining it? What system do you trust so completely that you've forgotten it's run by fallible human beings? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video has challenged you to think differently about politics, economics, or just human nature itself, share it with someone who also isn't afraid to confront uncomfortable truths. Because this is how we resist the banality of evil together, thinking, questioning, remembering that our humanity matters more than our ideologies. The choice isn't between capitalism and socialism. The choice is between thoughtfulness and thoughtlessness, between seeing people as ends in themselves or as means to our preferred system. That choice is always available to us, and it's the most important choice we'll ever make. Subscribe if you want more content that challenges you to think beyond the obvious. And remember, the price of freedom is an eternal vigilance against our enemies. It's eternal vigilance against our own certainty.